Okay, welcome back to the Ghost Island tutorial. Beginners 2D beginners. Okay, the reason I'm rambling is because I did an entire video on UI and my OBS studio decided to not record for the last 10 minutes, which kind of sucked. Okay, so welcome back to this part. Today we are just going to focus on how we can get points out of these collectibles. Okay, right now we don't really get anything out of the collectibles, but yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And in the process we're gonna learn about UI elements. Okay, which is kind of boring. I mean, knowing about it is kind of boring, but like using it is quite cool. Now, before I get to the boring stuff, I'm going to actually start off today's session with scripting, okay? So, let's go to Assets and Scripts and click on your collision script to open up your collision script. Now, the idea is really simple here. Wait, let me see if I'm live. Please, OBS, don't cut me off. Okay. The idea is whenever you are colliding with the coin, you are going to get some points. Now, whenever you are faced with this in a situation like this, you turn to variables, okay? A variable is something that would help you keep track of any value. For example, we have done this for our coin layer, okay? So we have stored this layer number 9 in coin, okay? And baddie 10. That goes back to the previous session. Where we actually was working with these layers, okay, so to detect collision between different layers, okay. As you can see here, collision collided with layer coin or layer baddie. Although this is not how most people would do it, I wouldn't do it as well. I probably would use layer mask, but I feel like this is an easier way for anyone who's starting out. Now, today we're going to use the same concept, except we will create a variable to keep track of our score. Okay. Quick note: there's no need for us to make this public, so no script needs to have access to this. I'm just gonna have it as private. And score is gonna be whole numbers. I'm just gonna call it int. I'll not call it int. I mean, the data type would be int, and then the name. The name can be anything of your choice. You can call it gems, diamonds, whatever. Remember, this is not the label that's gonna come up in your game. It's just the variable name. Okay. For anyone who's just getting confused why we have const here and not const in here, that's because whenever you make a variable const, you can't really change the value. It's like constant, okay? I changed them, so I made them const because obviously we know the layer numbers and we shouldn't be able to change them. Score, obviously, on the other hand, would be changing. So we're gonna set it to 0, okay? So whenever my game starts, I would have 0 points. Now, when do we increase the value? Well, we increase the value precisely in here. So whenever my player collides with anything that exists on the coin layer, we turn that coin off, so we don't see it, and then we're just going to use the score variable, okay, spaced. Then we're going to go back to the second tutorial where we talked about this plus equal, which allows you to add on top of whatever you have. So I have 0 and I want to add on top of that, okay? So I can add 1, 2, 3, 4, however many points you want to get. If you are adding 1, there is a nice little shorthand that is this plus plus. It really increases, so it increments the value from increments the value by 1. So let's say you are cool, and you can tell your friends that, hey, I'm cool plus plus, meaning you're just a bit cooler. Okay, so that adds 1 to your score. Okay, if you want to do that, otherwise you can just do plus equal and add the amount you want to do, and then semicolon. I'm gonna stick with plus plus. Okay. As we don't have any UI for the moment, I'm just gonna go with debug. Far out debug dot log just to show you guys the value. Okay, so I'm going to score, oopsies, score. And if you guys remember, you have this plus that just adds two words together, not really two numbers together here in this context. So we're going to display the value of score. Coolies, let's go back to Unity, and if I launch, you'd see how if I collect if I can get past the baddies, there's so many baddies right now. Okay, so whenever I collide with a coin, you can see how there the debug, you can see it says score 0, score 1 rather. So it was 0, but now it is 1. If I collect another one, the score updates to 2. If I hit one of the baddies, the score would reset to 0, and I can collect from the start. Okay. Now the next step for us would be to display this value as a label, and this is where it's gonna get a bit boring, so I really apologize beforehand, but it's something that is really important for us to know. I'm gonna get rid of the debug.log because I'm not printing it to the console, rather I'm gonna have it on our game. Now, whenever you're trying to add a label, okay, or add a UI element, you have to add that as a children of a canvas. Okay, so whatever you do in terms of displaying a label or text or shadow or anything, really you have to add a canvas. Okay, and everything every UI element would have to be a children of that canvas object. Okay, so what you do is go to the hierarchy, right click and go to UI and create a canvas. Okay, create a canvas, and the moment you do that, you'd see from the starting of the camera, you'd have this ginormous, my lord, look at that ginormous thingy that is your canvas. It's actually kind of taking over your screen right now. You can't see that though because it has no color, it's transparent. We don't have to worry about the size of the canvas, okay? They exist on different coordinate systems, okay? The only reason they're drawn together is because I guess that's the only way you can show them. Unity can only show them, right? But they're on different coordinate systems, so you don't have to really worry about the size of the canvas, okay? So it's going to be there. Whenever you add a canvas, you'll also get an event system that is just there to handle the events that may occur or relate to the canvas. Now, once you have done that, you want to go ahead and add a panel inside the canvas. Okay, so if I go to canvas now, oops, yep, click on canvas, right click and go to UI and add a panel. You'd see how that panel, so imagine you saw the canvas, right? And panel is kind of like where you're going to be drawing on an item off the canvas. So canvas is empty, you can draw whatever you want, and there you're just adding a panel. Okay, now once you add the panel, you can see how it kind of covers the entire screen. And although I don't know if you guys saw that or noticed that, the canvas starts from the middle of the level, however it covers up or layers up the entire display. That is kind of like an indication they are on different coordinate systems. However, they are kind of when you play the game, they are layered on top of each other. Now, I don't necessarily want the layer to be covering up the entire canvas. Okay, you can change the size and everything. Before that, though, well, let me just change the color quickly. Okay, so maybe not green, blue. Okay, a brighter shade of blue, I guess. If I go back to my game view, you'd see how the game now has a blue tint on top of it. Okay. Now, and this is going to be the boring part. Let's see if I can wrap it up in like 20 minutes. That is this anchor point. Okay, I don't know what you call this place. I don't know, where it says stretch around the top right of your screen. If you click on it, you have these anchor presets, which kind of allows you to set where a game object would be in relation to its parent. What I mean here is our panel is a child object of the parent canvas. So whenever you're setting a position for the panel, it is in relation to the canvas. Okay, and this ID, getting used to this ID is really important, especially when you are going to do labels, which we're going to do next. Okay, because you want your label, your text to resize and rescale according to the screen size, and also you want them to be fixed at a certain position, not really moving around and everything. Okay, it's really important to know how this works. In short, you can hold down Alt and Shift, okay, to kind of set the anchor. So at the start, I think it was set to stretch. You can see these arrows on every edge of this canvas. Okay, this is kind of like a pivot. Now you can change the pivot to wherever you want. You can see how I'm moving the pivot to the left. Now I'm moving to the top left, top middle. What this really means is whenever you are drawing this element, which is this panel, now it's going to get drawn from the top middle of its parent, which is the canvas. Let's make it more evident. If I just change the width, okay, of this panel now, maybe set to 200 by height to 200. You can see how it's getting drawn out from that pivot, okay? So it's kind of anchored there, all right? So no matter what you do, it's going to be anchored there, all right? I don't necessarily want this to be anchored over there. I'm just trying to prove a point. I'll make a point. So you can anchor it to wherever you want, and then it's going to get drawn out from that particular point, okay? Yeah, and it scales accordingly. It scales accordingly from this particular point, all right? When we add the text as a child object of this panel, this presetting would get even more important. Now I want my panel to be located at the bottom middle. Okay, so that's what I'm going to select as. Okay, so Alt Shift, you hold down Alt Shift, and then you can select whatever you want. And so right now this is kind of like center. A panel like this would be beneficial. Let's say if you have a game over event where the player dies, and you can just make this thing appear. Okay. Have a panel that has a transparent sort of background, and you can have text that says game over and stuff. Okay, we're not focusing on that though. At the moment we're just focusing on a label. So yeah, I want my label to be at the bottom center, but obviously feel free to go with any other position. Now I'm going to go with the width of 200 by maybe 30, height. Okay, so width of 200, height 30. Let's see how it looks in the game view. Okay, that's okay. Also, if you're done with the presets, you can also still move them around using these positions, but just remember it's going to be moving around in terms of the anchor, the pivot where you've set, and that's going to get drawn out of, drawn in relation to the canvas. I'm going to set it to 0 though. Okay, so that's setting it's kind of like setting the origin point. Okay. Now, with that out of the way, let's create on panel and create a text object. So right click on panel, then UI and text. And this is gonna get even more dense. I'm sorry, but I feel like if you learn this once, it would really help you. So once you do the text, create a text object, you can see how this text box comes with its own width and height. If I increase the width, you can see how this wide border, I don't know if you guys can see that, the wide border the wide border gets bigger as well. Okay, so that's the width and height of the text box that you need to take into consideration. I think I'm gonna go with 200 as well, and height maybe 30. Once you do that, so I'm matching my panel's height and width. Once you do that, again we need to focus on the preset. Okay, so you can hold an Alt Shift and maybe go with any. You know what, before we decide where to go with, I want to show you guys why it's important. So let's say I fix this, you know what, even if I fix it, let's go and mess around with my panel size. Okay, if I just change my panel's height, you can see how the the height is increasing and the Y of the text is scaling. However, if I do the width, so let's think of this as your device size changing. You're playing on a different device, your width isn't changing. So you can see why understanding this concept would really help. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my 230. So text, I want this to be preset to, let's say if I go with this one. Okay, so you can see how my anchor goes to, the pivot goes to the right center. Now what happens if I increase my width or height? The text box gets drawn out in relation to that particular point, okay, which is this one. So yeah, just an important thing to know where you want to have your preset. Let me just quickly reset my width 200 by 30. Okay, I want my text to be anchored in the middle. Okay, so the pivot, I want the pivot to be in the center middle. Okay, there. By the way, you're just setting the boxes, text boxes pivot. The text is obviously there. That's the text's alignment. You can change that over here under the text component, paragraph. You can set the text to there, and I don't know, I'm gonna go with that. Okay, now if I go back to my panel and increase and mess around with the size of the height and width, you can see the height increases, width is still gonna be there like that. Okay, and if I go back to game view and change display, you can see how it's fixed there. The panel, the label is fixed there, and the text is like that as well. Okay, so yeah, it's a really important concept. Play around with and it and see which one you like best. Why did I mess up? I actually kind of like this. No, I don't. Maybe don't. Yeah, I'm just gonna go back to my 200. But yeah, you go with your values. Cool. With all those boring details out of the way, let's just change the text box to maybe score 0. I mean, we're gonna change them later anyway, the font and stuff. You can go with bolder them for the moment, but we're gonna change it to some custom fonts in a bit, maybe in a couple of lessons. Okay. Right. With that out of the way, we can now focus on the script. Okay, we can now focus on the script where we just want to make sure that this value, this score value, appears on this text box. How you do that? Well, the very first step would be for you to create a reference or create a variable that can store the reference of this text game object. You can just say, you can do game object text like that if you want to, or you can be a bit more specific and go text. And that is, I mean, you need to know that it comes from Unity UI, and you can do that. Okay, so it's Unity engine.ui text. If you do that, it would automatically add this in by the way, Unity engine.ui. If your compiler is complaining, you may need to add this using unity.ui. So text, and let's just gonna call it label. Okay, and semicolon. Now I want to have a way for me to drag this text onto the script. For that, we can either make it a serialized, or we can just make it serialized field, or we can just make it a public field. Okay, you can do that. So public text label, save your work. And if you go back to Unity and click on your player object, you would find under the collision script, the label variable is a public variable now. Okay, so that's the label variable, which has the data type as text. What that means is we can just literally grab the text game object and place it on the label. So now on our script, we have the reference, and we can easily change the text, the color, the font, whatever we please. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up in 2 minutes, hopefully. Now, we only have the trigger event here, trigger callback event. We're gonna get the update event back. Okay, so the update callback event, and these are built-in events, so you have to like match the name. So Unity can find the reference of this one. I'm pretty sure that is inheritance. Anyways, so in this update event, you know what it does. It runs every frame. I covered it in detail in the first couple of tutorials, so I'm not going to go into that. What we really need to do here is we're just going to need to change the text of this label. Okay, so we can just use the variable label.text. As you can see, you can change the color, font, alignment as well apparently. So label.text equals to string, that is the quotations. And in my game, if you guys remember, I'm actually collecting clouds for some reason. So I'm just going to call this one clouds, space and colon, okay, space plus. Remember, this plus isn't adding two numbers, it's just adding 2 words. In this case, my second word would be the value, okay, score, okay, the variable name, which stores the value 0, or whatever value it is when you're collecting, and then semicolon. We have already debugged, or we already have tested this section out using the debug.log, so we know this works, our score works. So it was all about just painting it, and we have done that already using this line of code. So we can just go back to Unity now and launch our game. So if I collect my coin, you can see how the clouds, the counter goes back up. I'm just going to FreeSync so it's a better view. I wonder how long I'm waiting for. Oh, there you go, my coin is back. There you go, second cloud. And we know it's going to reset every time we hit a baddie because we tested that out as well. If I can hit a baddie, there you go, it resets and I can get coins. So you have a basic game setup really. You can add coins, you can add baddies. That is a ginormous canvas. Remember, this is the part where you're building a level, by the way. So yeah, in the next tutorial we are going to be adding tile maps so we can get started with designing and building our level. Okay, and also we'll add some scripts for the sound because this doing tile mapping would bore you out maybe, I don't know. So some scripts to add some sounds and tile map, and in the very last tutorial we are going to add some custom sprites so they don't look like squares and circles, rather they look something really cool. Alright, hopefully OBS doesn't cut me off again and I don't have to record it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.